completely oversold. Thank you very much. You can come back again and be the startup routine. I don't know whether anyone noticed, Davos was last weekend. I saw it on the telly, snowy, full of very rich, powerful people, full of some people who were challenging some of those rich, powerful people as well. But there was a top 10 companies in the world that are responsible for messing up the world in terms of climate. And on them was a company that I bet, I don't know, 1 in 4 people in this room use, and they've got them in their wallet. Barclays Bank was on that list of top 10 problems. So you feel like we're going, these are points where you want to lift your hand up, but we could go on all of them. Eventually, we'd all have our hand up and we'd be saying that. On Thursday, Lloyds Bank announced, as all the banks are doing now, that they're going to have a increased rate for overdrafts. So all the banks are now saying, because they have to change their rules, and the reason they have to change their rules is that people who are poorer were paying more for their banking services. So my banking service is free. And it's because people who are going overdrawn who can't necessarily afford those banking services will be in charge for it. So the regulator said, we'll change that, and you've got to all announce your fees. So they all did it, and they've all come out with the same sort of fee, 39.9. But there was something interesting on Thursday, because Lloyds Bank said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have 39.9 for normal people with normal credit rating. But if you've got poor credit rating, and you're being forced into this situation for another reason, we're going to charge you more. So you've got this bank that, by the way, we partly own because they messed up so badly, who are charging poorer people, and they're making things work for us. So you look at those things, you think, this just isn't right. And one of the things that I've been fascinated by what we could do if we wanted to. We don't have to accept these things. And about 5 years ago, the law changed in the UK that allowed a cooperative to own a banking license. So somewhere in the deep annals of Westminster, someone's typed something, this will be good. They probably didn't know they were doing it. They typed and said, let's have a cooperative as owning a bank. Because those who think the cooperative bank was a cooperative, it wasn't. It was a limited company that held the banking license that was owned by a cooperative. It was quite different. But now the law's changed, so a cooperative could own a bank. So a few of us thought, well, why don't we do it ourselves? Because it's important. Because one of the things that people often say when they talk about the value, that why one of the reasons we can't be independent, people say, it's £15 billion your deficit. I don't accept that anyway, to be honest. A deficit, if we're in charge of the thing, we'll have our deficit that we choose. We won't have a deficit that's given to us. But if there's £15 billion, there's 2.5 million active current accounts in Wales. 97% of them are with the 5 biggest banks. Each bank makes about £400 Has anyone got a calculator? I'll do it in my head. Each bank makes about £400 per year from each of those accounts. Anyone done the maths yet? It's a big figure. So £1 billion leaves our economy to these people who do things like we've just discussed. It travels over the M4, along the A55, it leaves Wales and disappears. If you want to start reducing that £15 billion, I'd give you £1 billion straight away if we did our own bank. So we can do our own bank. We can have our own bank, and we're going to have our own bank. And our own bank's going to be called Banc Cambria. And Banc Cambria is going to be a cooperatively owned bank. So that means there won't be any shareholders, because one of the things that, it's a shame David's gone now, because one of the things I concern myself with the way the economy goes, when you have shareholders from outside owning the entities that make money, the people who can buy shares tend to be people who've already got money. So what we're doing, we're allowing this extraction to continue. But if we own our own bank, it could actually be owned by everybody in this room. And you can start to change what works, because banking and retail banking is really profitable. And the reason that banks have left our communities isn't because they can't afford it, it's because they'd rather do other stuff. They'd rather do other stuff. What you don't really know, probably care about, is they're doing stuff with your money. So when your salary comes in, your bank balance is high, and then you spend it, you get your mortgage, you go shopping, goes down, money comes in, may go a bit overdrawn, they'll charge you 39.9% for that. Unless you can't afford it, they'll charge you more. It goes down and then it can come back up. While that's sitting in the coffers of Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds, NatWest, they use it. What do they use it for? Well, in Barclays' case, they use it for fracking. NatWest use it for buying businesses they should never have bought when RBS, just before the great financial crash. They use it for things that we may not agree with. If you owned your own bank, you could decide how we spend the profits, because we'd still be able to make profits from doing it. So we can do this thing. I think we're fortunate because we have a moment in time, because Wales is being hit harder than any other part of the UK in terms of bank closures. So over the past 5 years, Wales has lost 43% of its banks. You probably live in communities that used to have 4 banks on the corner of the square, and they're all going one by one. And they're all going because they know you can't do anything about it. Because actually, if you want to switch your bank account, where'd you go? So if you're with Lloyds, and say NatWest give me £100, what's the point? They don't care. They don't care the same as the rest of them. But we could do different, and we will do. We're fortunate because today, politicians of all colours are getting post after post after post after post saying this isn't right, this isn't fair. I need to go and get access to my money. We all know that actually access to money and proximity of branches affects people who are furthest away from financial inclusion than anywhere else. So people who are elderly, may not be able to drive, may not be able to use a computer, no longer can get access to their money. So grandparents, uncles, aunties, we know the people who are struggling to get access to their money. And they're just being dispossessed, but the banks don't care. So we're in a position that we can do something about it. We believe we've got the political support. The First Minister in particular put it into his manifesto for Labour leadership that he would introduce a community bank. So we've got him behind us. We've got the other parties supported, because how can you not be supportive of something that puts communities back at the centre of what banking should do and starts to actually democratise what is banking? Some people say, you're over-politicising banking. Well, politics is about people. It's not about party politics. It's not about politicians. Politics is about people and how they interact. Everyone needs a bank. You cannot survive in this world. And those people who don't have a bank account get taken apart by the financial system. They have to pay more for their gas, they have to pay more for their electricity, they have to pay more for everything if they don't. So we all need a bank account. And the power of that is being taken away from us. So this fits with this idea that being expressed by all the other speakers about actually let's have some independence of spirit to go and do these things. But one thing that I'm been brutally aware to me over the last years, we don't actually need to wait for other people to say yes to us to do this stuff. The doors are open for us to take control of things that we want to do today. Our biggest concern with this bank is how long it takes. Because actually the need is now. In 4 years' time, there's a good chance that people would have got bored and fed up with, so we used to have banks. Yeah, I know what that branch used to be. I know what used to, I can see there may be a hairdresser in it. In all likelihood, a lot of these places will still be empty. They won't be being filled up. So we've got an opportunity to make change here, and our key challenge is to speed this up as quickly as possible. But we need you. We actually need people to use it, because the worst thing that can happen is if we set this thing up and people go, actually, I don't care. I don't really care. Well, we should care, because if we want to change Wales, we've got to change by starting to take control and build our own institutions. Because the institutions we're being delivered aren't good enough. They weren't intended to be good enough. And actually, they do destruction that's further afield than the stuff that we do. They break the economy. So it's a fantastic project. I'm not a banker. I think that's a real blessing in disguise, because bankers, are all, they're used to the way of doing things. So what's fascinating is going into talking with bankers and saying, well, isn't it really simple? And they go, yeah, but don't tell anyone. Because banking is really simple. They get money. They utilise that money by giving out loans, and the balance between the two is how they make money. So I really appreciate this as an opportunity to talk about it. There is if you go onto our Twitter feed, which is Banc Cambria, we've got, and I'll post them back to the top of the tree, we've got some polling with using a Welsh organisation called DoPoll to try and find out what people want in their bank. So it asks some questions about what's important. And the things that we think are important is that, you know, it needs to be Welsh. It needs to be, people need to be able to converse wherever they are, whether it's online, on the telephone, or in the branch through the medium of Welsh. We also think it's important that we don't pay people excessive amounts of money because they don't need to. And this will be your money to do it as well. So get involved, have a look at the Twitter polls. We do care what you say, because after all, this isn't my bank. If we do it, which we will, this will be all of our banks. So we would appreciate if you could get involved. Thank you for listening. Diolch yn fawr.